happy to be with everybody. First, kind of just check the logistics. Everybody can see the presentation, right? Okay, great. All right, so today I'm going to talk about happiness. Oops. Happiness is so important. Okay, it is actually in the United States Declaration of Independence. We talk about our unalienable rights, right? So among them, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So people recognize the importance of happiness 300 or 400 years ago. But how can we pursue happiness? This is the question that's actually, it's more complicated and more difficult than we thought, okay? How so? We have today, actually, I'm gonna cover a few misconceptions about our happiness. And I'm gonna talk about a few techniques we can apply to enjoy the stuff that we already have. And then at the end, I would cover 5 things that researcher has shown that can really, really make us happy, okay? But a lot of us are not aware of them. So first, I want to cover some misconception about happiness, okay? And the first one is a lot of us, frankly, including myself, we used to think success equal to happiness, okay? So what are successes? Typically, we think about, we get a good job, okay? We get a dream job. Dream job usually means we get paid a lot of money, whether it's salary, bonus, commission, stock, etc. Right? So the more pay, the better. Okay, and then we would like to get respected, get recognition at our work. Ideally, every year we get the performance review. We get a big recognition, and our boss, give us bonuses. The next thing is a lot of us, especially some of the young folks, we think, happiness probably equal to, success in our love life. When we find our true love, there's a saying called, happily ever after, right? When you get married, we're supposed to be happily ever after. So that's kind of a success we think we are. We equate that to success. It also, a lot of times it means, we have a very good body, perfect body. We exercise, we try to look like a supermodel or Olympic athlete. And we think when we get this good body, we will be happy. Obviously, a lot of us, I think myself included, we think we want to get awesome stuff, right? A lot of stuff, awesome stuff can be, a fancy car. In some cases in the Bay Area, it's like a Tesla. It's both environmentally friendly as well as, powerful car. We want to get nice houses with nice views. Some of the young folks, we want to get, a PlayStation or the latest gaming computer, etc. Right? And for some of the middle-aged folks, success also probably means, our kids are doing well, right? They hit a home run in baseball, they score a goal in the soccer game, or if they get to the high school, the ultimate sort of success is they get to Stanford or any of the Ivy League school, right? So we think these success equal to happiness. But that's actually not true, okay? We do not have to have success, and we do not have to have a lot of success to be happy. So researcher has shown over and over again. So take income, for example. There are many studies has done on this topic. The most recent one is about a couple years ago. Okay, so Jabe and his colleague essentially did some research. They verify essentially about $100,000 is the ideal income for our life satisfaction in North America. Before that, the higher salary it goes, we tend to be happier. Okay, but at the point that reach $100,000, if you live in the city, New York or the Bay Area, you probably should add 20% to that. But anything above $100,000, our happiness relatively stay flat, and in some cases actually going down. Okay, so if you truly look at happiness perspective, trying to pursue a higher income, okay, making $500,000, $1 million, etc., that alone will not make you happy. Okay. Take marriage also, for example. Story for the young folks planning to get married or just get married. Happiness ever after is actually just a fairy tale. Okay, so research have done. This is an example about the married population and their happiness. As you can see, after 5 years, folks' happiness goes down a little bit. And after 6 years, their happiness dropped even further below the 2 years before the marriage. I do want to point that out. Married people tend to be happier than single people. So so go ahead, still get married. Just realize, like, you need to work on it. Okay, marriage itself will not bring you happiness. Okay, so these are just two examples about success and happiness. Okay, I want to quickly move on to a misconception. Second thing that in a way our mind, you can consider our mind play tricks on us, is we do not actually, when we have success, when we have the stuff, we do not measure our happiness based on the stuff that we have or based on the success that we achieve. Rather, we use reference points and comparison. And a lot of time we use unreasonable comparison. Okay, so this is actually a very famous study has done many years ago. They're comparing the happiness of Olympic medal winner, in particular silver medal winner versus bronze medal winner, right? Whether they are happy or not. So it's the result is very conclusive. The silver medal winner, they tend to be not as happy as the bronze winner medal winners. Why so? Because of the reference point, right? Silver medal winner tend to compare themselves to the gold medal winner. They, all they think about is how close they are with winning the gold medal. On the other hand, the bronze medal winner, they usually compare themselves to the athlete that missed the podium, essentially. They think how lucky they are, right? If they are just slow by 100 milliseconds, they won't even get a medal. So they tend to be happy both immediately after the race as well as when they are on the medal stand, right? So this is, if you step back, this is kind of crazy, right? Silver medal, definitely you achieved more, than the bronze medal winner. In the case, in some case by a lot, right? But yet they are unhappy. Okay, so this is just one example. In our real life, we have this phenomenon called social comparison. This is essentially the act of evaluating one's own salary, status, possessions, ability, how many houses did I sell, etc., right? Compared to some other people, usually our neighbor, sometimes our relative, or actually random people you see in commercials, or the so-called social influencer on our social network. And a lot of time, our mind are using very unreasonable reference point, right? Instead of comparing to people in a similar situation, a lot of time we just make like a very unreasonable comparison. This phenomenon has intensified in the last 10 years with proliferation of Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and all these social media, and with your cell phone that you have, right? You essentially carry a weapon of social comparison, with you all the time, okay, if you're not very careful. So it's definitely getting way worse than 10 years ago. Okay. The third misconception is so-called hedonic adaptation. In plain English, it's essentially we get used to stuff, right? So our big house, our fancy car, maybe make us happy for the next couple of days. But on the third day, you know what? It's not as exciting as it was during the first day. Okay, and we just get used to stuff. So one example is again the example of salary. Okay, we tend to get used to different salary levels very quickly. This is a study have done on a group of researchers follow 8,000 individuals. I think they are in Western Germany and Germany for the period of 15 years. Okay, as some of them, economy grows, their salary rose risen dramatically. In the early 90s, there was a recession, so a lot of their salary drops. And then late 90s, again, economy pick up, so their salary went up again. But throughout, look at their happiness line. It's more or less stay flat, up and down a little bit, but not much, right? And then as you can see, for the later, from 95 to 2000, even when their income risen dramatically, their happiness really stay flat. So we get used to stuff. Okay. Here's another example. This is actual YouTube footage I found from of a person essentially just found out they got a job offer from Google. For the computer science, college graduates, finding a job at Google, Facebook, or Microsoft, whatnot, it's really a big deal, right? Because they pay well, you job security, free lunch, etc. So it's considered a dream job. So in the video, I'm not going to play here, but in the video, she is screaming, she's crying, she's rolling, on the ground, literally, right? So, but this is the sort of our immediate reaction, right? Think about it in your life, right? You may get a big raise. You may, for the young folks, you may find out you just get accepted from, UCLA or Stanford or this your dream school, right? So your reaction upon hearing the news is probably very, very exciting. But once you get to that place, once you start working at Google, once you start studying Yale, in 1 year you're still there. But when you get up in the morning, will you have the same feeling? Probably not, right? Your kind of a reference point is reset. You get used to stuff, so it doesn't no longer make you happy, even though you're still living in that dream. You still enjoying that success, right? So again, our mind play tricks on us. This is so-called hedonic adaptation. Okay. The next misconception is called impact biases. Okay, what is it? This is essentially, we have a tendency to overestimate the emotional impact of a future event, both in terms of intensity and its duration. It actually goes both ways, active and positive and negative. When we're thinking about a particular event that's gonna happen to us, we tend to kind of fixate it on that particular event, and then we tend to ignore, sort of our richness of our life, right? There's so many things happening in our life, so many things we can enjoy, that can make us happy. But if we just thinking about one particular decision, right, then we tend to magnify its impact to our life. So here's a couple examples. One is essentially a group of researchers done some research. They're asking students in college, how do they predict their happiness when they receive better than expected grade, or lower than expected grade. So predictively, they rate themselves, this is column A essentially, they rate themselves very happy if they get higher than expected grade. And then they rate themselves very unhappy if they get lower than expected grade. But the actual result is actually there's no difference, okay? People, the student, when they get the grade, they may be happy for maybe a second or so, but they quickly realize the letter grade is actually not very important, okay? The more important thing is you actually learning or taking the class and then gaining the knowledge, right? So if you take a difficult class, you may get a lower grade, but it doesn't diminish in your acquisition of the knowledge. So this is one example. Another example is essentially professors predicting how happy they will feel after their tenure decision. So for those of you who don't know about the tenure decision, it's actually a pretty big deal for professors. If they are in a tenure tracking position, when they get a tenure, it's essentially job guarantee for life, right? If they don't get a tenure, then they obviously they get embarrassed, but they also need to find another job. In some cases, they may need to change their career, right? Go to the industry. So, but the result is very similar, right? So the professors, they predicted they will be very happy when they get the tenure, and then they will be very unhappy that when they get denied tenure. In reality, they are actually, the result is actually very, very similar. They quickly get over it. They realize their life have so many different things going on. They have a lot of different choices on do whatever they want to do, right? So they are, this is the misconception. We tend to magnify sort of a single event, their impact to our happiness. Okay, so now I cover these misconceptions. The next thing that I want to talk about is a few techniques that you can employ to enjoy the success that you already have, right? We talk about the success is not it, but a lot of us do have success. When we have success, what do we need to do to enjoy ourselves more? Okay, so the first recommendation I have is invest less in stuff, more in experience. What do I mean, experience? Experience is essentially, examples are hiking, sightseeing, traveling, right? Enjoy a concert, music, art, food, going to the restaurant, have a nice meal, and a cultural event, go to museum, go to these type of events. So this is a little bit counterintuitive, right? So if I spend a lot of money, how does these experience make me more happy than if I buy something more concrete, right? The idea is like, I can use the stuff over and over again. I can enjoy it more, right? But in reality, it's actually not the case. There are plenty of research have been done in this area. I'm not going to cover them in detail, but some explanation maybe. Number one, the anticipation of an experience typically is itself more pleasant, right? It's very pleasant, and it's probably more pleasant than anticipation of buying a stuff. And it is also very more pleasant to sharing the experience with your friends and your families, right? You can talk about a trip or a concert you go for many, many times. And every time you describe it, for you and your friend, it's very pleasurable. On the other hand, if you bought a new suit, right? How many different ways you can talk about with your friend? Like, hey, I get a nice jacket. Okay, great, nice jacket. But it's sort of not very interesting to share this kind of experience. For experience, you can relive it. Every time you relive it, it's as rich as the first time you experience it. On the other hand, the stuff gets old and worn and it reminds you how much you spend on it, right? Think about it, you know, how fresh is, you know, last year's iPhone, right? How fresh is, you know, the iPhone X, like, I don't know how many years ago, 3-4 years ago. It was a huge deal back then, but now it just looked like old and worn and it's not very interesting. But you spend $1,000 on it. And last but not least, experience also less susceptible to social comparison. Okay, so I can have a great experience. I don't have to spend a lot of money. There are millionaires and billionaires out there. They can, you know, have a different experience. But my experience is probably as interesting or as pleasurable to me as a millionaire and billionaire's experience. Something's happening. I'm gonna go on. The second tip I have is try savoring. What is savoring? Savoring is the act of stepping outside of an experience to review and appreciate it. Okay, so you notice and enjoy the experience, and you think about how lucky you are to have that experience. And when you have that experience, you only think about the present. You do not think about, you know, the next thing you want to do. Just folks, just 1 second. Okay. All right, I'm gonna continue. Yeah, you think about how lucky you are. You only think about the present. You do not look ahead to say, oh, my experience will be over very soon, right? So savoring tend to make your experience more enjoyable. The next thing is activate gratitude. There are a couple ways you can have to activate your gratitude. One idea is you have a weekly or daily exercise of identify the people that you're thankful of, okay? And all of us, a lot of us are successful. I think truly, like, we have a lot of people that we can be thankful for, right? So recognizing that tend to make us enjoy our success more. And the second practice is a very specific technique called gratitude visit. This is essentially writing a thank you note to, you know, your family member, your friend, and your coworker. So you're not only thinking about them, but you actually express your gratitude to other people. Below is a research have done when people place gratitude visit, it tend to have lasting effects to their happiness. On the right-hand side is they are enjoying they are having a boost of their happiness. On the right-hand side, the chart is essentially, it reduces their depressive symptoms. Okay, and the effects actually last weeks into months, okay? So yeah, next, if you want to be happy, be thankful of what you have and make sure you thank other folks. The fourth tip we have is called is avoid social comparison, right? We talked about it 10 minutes ago, how social comparison can do harm, make us enjoy things less. So we should try to avoid this. There are various different techniques of this. The first one is, you know, the so-called stop technique, right? So when you see, you know, on TV, you know, a bunch of attractive people, you know, have great bodies, they're so happy running on the beach, right? So you should just think like, okay, I should stop comparing myself to them, right? These are people supposedly have a disease. The commercial is trying to sell me some medications. You know, I don't want to get that disease, right? So there's nothing for me to compare these people. Another way to avoid social comparison is precisely using the techniques I just described, right? You be thankful of the things that you have, and then your mind is occupied with the gratitude, and then you have less time for envy, essentially. When you use social networking application, also be careful, be mindful of only curate the information that you have, right? That's not causing you to enact your social comparison. Just recognize this. And last, I know it's very, very difficult to do, but I know actually a few friends, they delete their social networking application on their phone or on their laptop, or they make it very difficult, no shortcut, no notification, make it very difficult for them to use it. They only use it, once a day or once every couple of days. These are like the coolest people I actually ever met. They are really, they are doing better than some of us. Okay, so these are the kind of a few tips on reducing social comparison. Okay, so I want to pause a little bit, right? So I cover some of the misconceptions of happiness. I just cover some techniques that we can employ, right, to enjoy the success that we have more. Okay, but I still haven't really answered the question, right? If success doesn't equal to happiness, but then what really will make us happy? Okay, so I'm just gonna cover a few different things. The first one is we need to rethink our dream job. Okay, uh, when initially I talk about success, dream job, uh, most folks think about the job that pay us a lot of money, the job can make us retire early, right? But actually, there are a few aspects of a job that can truly define a dream job. That aspect of job truly makes us happy, right? So there are a couple of them I want to talk about today. Okay, the first one is essentially if we can use our signature strengths and a job, then we tend to be happier. Okay, so what are the signature strengths? So this is a website. Sorry. Okay, so this is a website has essentially you can find out your signature strengths. Some of the example are creativity, curiosity, forgiveness, love of learning, humanity, fairness, etc. Right? So we are all unique people. Our core signature strengths are really, really different. This website actually give you an online test that you can take to find your core signature strengths. Just be a little bit careful there. They try to upsell you, $40, whatever, extended report. If you think it's worth it, pay them $40, but otherwise you can take the free test and to identify your core signature strengths. And then there are also a couple links here that you can find out activities that activate your core signature strengths. But the bottom line is, if you use more of your strengths at work, then you tend to be more productive and have higher job satisfaction. And if your daily work use multiple your core signature strengths, you may be able to get into a mode that you think of your job as a calling, right? Rather than it's a way for you to earn a paycheck. So the best case scenarios is you get into a situation that you wake up every day and you think to yourself, like, I cannot believe I get paid to do what I'm doing, right? So if you can achieve that state, then your job is no longer a thing that you have to do, and then you will be happy every day at your job. Okay, so I hope you use your core strength, signature strength at work. There are actually specific research has done that directly connected our use of the signature strengths versus our happiness. Okay, and over a period of several weeks, very similar to other research, this on the left-hand side is increase of the happiness. On the right-hand side is suppression of depressive symptoms, right? So in both cases, um, using our core strengths have a lot of effect to our happiness. The next thing is that we can achieve happiness in our job is so-called flow, right? The definition is a flow is essentially a mental state in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment, right? So sometimes we call it, we're in a zone, right? So in this, for the folks attending this seminar, I think there are a lot of successful folks, right? So some of us may have experienced this zone, right? So this is very difficult to get to because it requires us to tackle on a challenging work, right? And using all our strengths. And when we do that, we tend to get to the upper right corner. It's a flow, high challenge, high skill. Okay. So I met a few folks that, get into that situation. And then again, when they do their job, although it is very hard, they are very, very happy doing what they do. There's a sense of essentially a fulfillment. Okay. Second practice is kindness. Okay. You don't necessarily have to, have money to, to demonstrate kindness. There are multiple research has done, and it all shows there are strong connections between happiness and kindness. On the top, the research has done essentially, they ask people happy versus generally happier people versus unhappier people. Happy people tend to have motivation to do more motivation to do kinder deeds, and they also recognizing their kind deeds more. And then the last one is they perform more kind behaviors. Okay, and then the bottom study is very interesting. In this case, the researcher directly asked some folks to perform kind acts. The only difference between the middle one and the right one is the middle one, they ask some people to perform multiple kind deeds in a single day, versus the right-hand side spread out multiple kind deeds over multiple days. So the result is essentially you tend to be a little more happier if you do multiple kind deeds in a single day. Okay, so this is a very specific strategy that you can do. Don't spread that out. Do it all at once. You make other people happy and you yourself happier. Okay. Talking about kind deed, how about spending money? This is a very happy study, I guess, by Professor Dunn in University of British Columbia. She did some research, essentially pretty straightforward. She gave some other folks $5 to ask them to spend on themselves, and another group of people to spend the money on somebody else. Typically $5, people just go to Starbucks, buy a drink for themselves or for somebody else, and then they give some folks $20 to do the same thing. Okay, and then at the end of the day, they call the subject to ask them about their happiness at the end of the day. Okay, and then she repeat the study in Uganda. Okay, in Uganda, sort of it's a different social economic situation. $5 and $20 it was a whole lot more in Uganda than in Canada, but the result is actually remarkably similar. Okay, people get the free money, they are happy. Obviously, they spend money on themselves, they are happy, but they are way happier if they spend the money on somebody else. And the amount of money does not make any difference. People are equally happy with $5 and $20, and they are equally happy in Canada versus in Uganda. Okay, so this is a little bit counterintuitive, right? So, we will think when I get free money, I get a drink, I will be extremely happy. Perhaps more happy than I have to give the money away, but that's not the case. It's been proven. So think about it. Next time, if you want to give yourself a boost, stop going to Amazon to binge, spending, buying stuff, but really think about other people, right? Think about what we can do to other people. If you spend this $20, $100, I guarantee you will be happier after you've done a good deed. Okay, the third practice is social connection. There are researcher has shown there are strong correlation between social relationships and happiness. Okay, so happy people tend to have more close friends, stronger family ties, and more romantic ties. And very unhappy people, their score on both friends, family, as well as romantic ties is way lower. Okay. And then also in terms of daily activities, happy people tend to spend more time with friends, family, and lover, and unhappy people spend more time alone. So this part I hope is pretty intuitive, right? Next, how about making connection to strangers? This is a very interesting study, fascinating research recently had done by Professor Apley and his colleague. I think he's from University of Chicago. He did a research. He basically asked people taking on a commuter train and bus to either stay alone or do whatever they normally do, or force them to talk to strangers. Okay, so he asked them to predict their happiness before they did this experiment, and then he recorded their happiness after they did this experiment. Okay, predictably, most people, they think they will be unhappy if they need to talk to a stranger, right? And it's very, very understandable. What if I get rejected? I will be embarrassed. People feel I'm a, freak. So it's very uncomfortable talking to strangers. But the reality is, the result is actually completely opposite, right? The people who are forced to talk to a stranger and make a connection, they reported they are way happier at the end of that experience. And people are tagged to, be alone listening to music, they tend to be a little bit unhappier. And more interestingly, they also asked the stranger than these subjects need to talk to about their response. And the people being asked to make them, talk to, they themselves are also happier. Okay, so it's not just, basically both parties are happier at the end of that connection. So this is very, very, I have to admit, for me, it's also a little surprise, but I kind of can get it. Next time, I think if I go on an airplane, I'll probably try to make an effort to talk to the people sitting next to me, and we'll see, hopefully the conversation will be successful, and I will be, both people will be a little happier. Okay, so I encourage everybody to give it a try as well. Okay, you won't be disappointed. And then here's yet another fascinating study. Okay, the professor essentially invited people to go to a room, have chocolate, and then they asked the people to write down the flavor of chocolate and how much they like the chocolate. When they do the test alone versus sharing this with another sort of a different person, with a stranger, in both cases, the chocolate tastes better and they like it better when they share with another person. it's kind of a mind-boggling, right? It's exactly the same chocolate. There's no difference, okay? But the shared experience way better, okay? So think about it. Even sharing with people unknown, that will increase the flavor, right? If you share with your family, your children, your loved one, with your parents, I bet the effect's gonna be even magnified, right? So please making more social connections, right? With your kids, with your parents, with your family members, and with strangers. Okay. Practice number 4, less mind wandering. Okay, so what is mind wandering? Mind wandering is a shift in the contents of thought away from an ongoing task and or from events in the external environment to self-generated thoughts and feelings. So in other words, when we are doing one thing, we're thinking about the things we just did, things we did yesterday, and we're thinking about what we're gonna do afterward, what we're gonna do later. Okay, we are kind of unfocused. Our mind is wandering. We do that all the time, actually. We do our mind wandering about 50% of the time. Um, uh, I do have to point out the mind wandering is actually a unique feature of human, right? We gain this ability through evolution, probably for good reason, to avoid the animal hunting, things like that. I haven't studied the detail, but there's an evolution benefit to mind wandering. On the other hand, it is very harmful to our happiness. Okay, um, it affects our enjoyment of activities. Okay, so there's this article in Science about 10 years ago, and the research has done relate to this. Just look at the right-hand side, the bottom part, right? When we not do mind wandering, we have this, our happiness is around 65, between 65 and 75. When we have mind wandering, in every single instances, whether it's pleasant mind wandering, neutral mind wandering, or unpleasant mind wandering, it tends to drag down our happiness, in some cases by a lot. Okay, so focused enjoyment when we do things tend to make us happy. How do we reduce the mind wandering? There is this practice called meditation. Research has shown that meditation will reduce mind wandering and directly increase our happiness. Their study had been done by Fredrickson 12 years ago. He put together a group of people with perform loving kindness, one kind of a meditation essentially, versus control group. In week 3 or week 4, the two groups the results start diverging. And the groups that practicing the meditation tend to become more happier. And it also have a lasting effects, okay? The last sort of practice that we can do is so-called directly taking care of our body, right? So we're exercising and sleep. So this part hopefully is not very controversial. There's tons of research has done in these two areas. There's a lot of books have been written, about these two subjects. Obviously, better exercise and sleep will benefit our life in many, many, many different ways, right? We will become healthier, we eat well, and we can focus more, etc., etc. But in terms of positive mind and happiness, exercise. I just want to show one study. This is actually done on the effects of exercise on treatment of depression. Okay, as you can see, the exercise have about 90% effective on treating depression. It's way better than taking medication alone. It's interesting enough, exercising alone is also better than doing both exercise and taking medication. Okay, so I cannot explain it, but this is the result. The next one is just one particular study on sleep and the positive emotions. This study has done, I think about 23 years ago. The researcher essentially forced a group of people to deprive them sleep for a few nights. Instead of sleeping 7 to 8 hours, these folks can only sleep 4 to 5 hours. And then when the experiment starts, their happiness, positive emotion just drop dramatically. And it's hidden by the, by the dot here. But toward the end of that experiment, when the subjects are allowed to sleep their normal hours again, then their happiness goes up. Okay. So this study is done again about 25 years ago. Nowadays, it's probably, it's probably very difficult to, start this type of exercise because experiment, because people recognize sleep deprivation is equal to torture, and the ethics board is probably of the university probably gonna block these type of experiment. I think it's considered inhumane. Okay, so I covered everything, right? I covered tons of different ways that can increase happiness, but how do we get started? It's just really, really just a lot of different things. It's kind of overwhelming. So I think I do agree. This is very, very difficult to do. And here's some of my tips. I recommend us to, if you want to do it, try to work on 2 areas. Pick an area that you think you're already strong and build on top of it. And then perhaps pick an area that you're not very strong. But please don't be too ambitious to try to, do everything. It's kind of absurd, you want to pursue happiness and you get stressed out by trying to do too many things, right? So some of the practical tips I have is, well, number one, please design sort of a situation support. What do I mean? Design your environment, whether you're at home or at work, to make it easy to do the right thing, so that your default behavior is the behavior that leads you to happiness. Try to form a habit rather than consume your willpower. Your willpower is limited, so don't just get used up on everything. And then you get exhausted, right? So some of the example essentially, you can delete your social network app on your phone and laptop. This enable you to focus more, right? You do less mind wandering, and then you do less social comparison. If you don't want to delete it, you can, sort of hide your social network application in multiple layer of folders or whatever, right? So if you want to get to that, you may click like 4 or 5 times if you really, really want to get to that. Okay. For those of you who want to exercise, in the morning first thing, so perhaps sleep with your exercise clothes. When you get up, you don't even have to put on your exercise clothes. You can just go out and run or do push-ups or whatnot, right? Set reminders on your calendar to exercise, to go to sleep, to meditate, and put your gratitude journal next to your bed. So before you go to bed, you can write a few things that you be thankful of, right? And use an app or doc to track your progress. So use Google Fit to track your, the steps, or use Calm to do meditation, etc. Right? I did not touch, the religion at all, but some of us have these rituals already that very much align with some of the practices that we have. So you can keep on doing what you're doing, and these will also lead you to kind of to happiness. Okay. Next is find like-minded people to support each other. You may want to find a buddy to exercise or meditate together. You can, not only do things together, you can talk about your progress and challenges, etc. Right? If you want to be a little bit more formal, you can, talk to your friend, um, basically have a buddy that you can have weekly check-ins, right? You can have 5 minutes or 10-minute conversation, specifically talk about one of the things that you want to do, and support each other and talk about different challenges. I know some writers, they want to, in this COVID-19 situation, they have weekly check-ins, they talk about their, writing project, etc. But you can talk about exercise, you can talk about gratitude, and making connection, etc. Right? So nothing stops us from finding the support that we can. Next is some specific planning techniques. So essentially, you can bring a little bit idea from your workplace to your sort of personal goals, right? So when you want to do some of these things, one technique is set specific goals, right? Not just saying, hey, I want to be be more grateful or write gratitude, pay a gratitude visit or exercise. But what exactly you want to do, right? When you're gonna do it, and where you're gonna do it, for how long. If you plan this out very specifically, then you tend to make it easy for you to follow through. Okay, and then there's this idea called technique called mental contrasting. So what do I mean mental contrasting? It's essentially a visualization of first thinking about positive future that you want to perform an activity, and follow up by thinking about obstacles, very practical obstacles, right? Then you can have a if-then plan, then leads you to better goal attainment. So I give you an example, right? Just exercise. So if you think you want to, every morning you want to run, or every other day you want to run or do whatever exercise, then you should not just think about, oh, how nice I will feel after the exercise. You should think about a few obstacles, right? Such as, okay, what if it's cold outside, right? What if it's raining outside? What if it's windy outside? What if my leg is sore, right? In this situation, what do I need to do, right? Maybe you have different strategies that you just think through them. Once you already visualize and practice how you work around these obstacles, you tend to better, right? You tend to be better, because when the real situation happens, in your mind, you already deal with it. You just automatically go there. You just say, okay, it's raining. Instead of running outdoors, I'm gonna do indoor exercise. And this is exactly indoor exercise I'm gonna do, because this is my raining day exercise, right? So you tend to be better. There's this book by Gabriella, and she specifically talked about the idea of mental contrasting. She called this technique WHOOP. Okay, so we may want to check that out. Okay, so last I want to share with you my own scorecard. Okay, I forgot to tell everybody, having the knowledge on how to make us happy doesn't make us happy by itself. It is really, really difficult. We need to practice them. So in my own case, for the last few months, I'm doing quite well with sleep and exercise. I'm doing a little bit, worse on signature strengths, and needed a lot of work on savoring and gratitude. I need a lot more work on kindness and connection. And I essentially did not make much progress on non-social comparison as well as mind wandering, for very not, for some reason that's not excusable. So I definitely looking to do a lot better in many of these areas that I talk about. Okay, last I want to list some of the references. Here's some of the books that you can read. I read the Happiness Advantage. This is great. I'm in the middle of reading the Positive Thinking. It's also good. The other two books, I listened to the Nudge already, but the third book I haven't read yet. But the author is a very famous professor, and some of the research I've cited as part of the talk So I definitely want to get to that. Um, there is this class on Coursera. It's a very, very popular class. It's probably maybe even the #1 class on Coursera. It's called The Science of Happiness by Professor Laurie Santos. I shamelessly lifted a lot of material from her class, but for those of you who are interested in, you should, and have the time, you should take that class. It's, your investment is probably 2 or 3 hours a week for, 5, 6 weeks, but I definitely, it's worth it. Okay, that's it. That's all I have. Yeah, thank you for joining. Now I can have answer any questions that you guys have.
Let's see. I have a question actually. Thank you
Okay.
very much for the talk. It's a fun and knowledgeable. You mentioned that people who doesn't use a social network tends to be happier, right? But I read a article before saying that people who post their photos more often
Mm-hmm.
uh, tends to be happier than the one who doesn't. Do you think it's true, or what's the reason?
Uh, yeah. So Lynn, I think there probably have some truth to it. Okay. So the people posting photo essentially, they are actually using a technique called savoring that I describe in this, right? So part of the savoring is you live this memory, you sort of enjoy your kind of experience. You by organizing your photo and posting your photo, it's a kind of an enjoyable experience. Um, and yeah, I would think the process of organizing your photo and curating your photos is perhaps even more important than sort of receiving praise from other people, on your picture. But this is I'm really sort of torn on this as well, and because we tend to post our best pictures. Okay, it's a human nature, right? We post our best pictures, but we probably took 10 kind of a bad pictures before we post one of them, and we post one of them, our body image looks perfect, and we tend to post our happier moment. And but in real life, our life, it's really like multifaceted, right? So sometimes I do quarrel with my kids. Okay, sometimes we are unhappy, and not just not very happy. I mean, sometimes we are worried about things, right? We need to do things, we need to preparation, a lot of work. And for the folks on the receiving end of these nice picture, sometimes they do social comparison. They just like, oh, how come Lynn is always so happy, and why my life is so miserable? And they start thinking about it, become more miserable. So it's a little yeah, it's a little bit tough. We kind of, in a way, we need to recognize uh, our our life is very rich, and when we see happy pictures or people with perfect body image or whatever, we need to recognize this. Like they probably have their bad moment as well, number one. Number two, they work very hard on these things. And we should sort of, I don't know, positively motivate us
Mhm.
to do some activities rather than do just like simple social comparison.
Yeah,
But our mind plays trick on us, so we cannot help it. We sort of need to intentionally
that's true.
think about this. Yeah, a
Okay.
really good point.
Let's see if we have. Oh, yeah, that's there's a there's another question talking about uh, said you see very good content. Thank you. There is one thing missing, that is the religious experience. What do you think?
Yeah. So I kind of touched that a little bit. Obviously, I don't want to. I mean, this is a secular talk, so I don't want to go there. But I did mention the religious experience. It's very much aligned with some of the things I described. Right, religion tend to promote gratitude, meditation and kindness and etc. And religion also have a lot of rituals, right? Rituals means you kind of have to follow them. They become automatic. You do good deeds, you making connections, you do kind deeds. So you automatically, if you have a good foundation of, be part of the religion, you already, in a way, practicing these sort of automatically without too much effort, right? So it's a great point. Yeah, really, I sort of don't want to talk about it, but I definitely recognize
Mhm.
it have a positive, very positive effect on many of the different things that we do.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so too.
great point.
Okay, so what else? Great talk, thank you. Let me see. Do you see the questions? How do you relate
Oh,
happiness to mirroring neuron system in our brain? Do you see this question? How do we? Sorry. How do you relate happiness to mirroring neuron system in our brain?
I see. So yeah, this is a part I have to admit I haven't studied a lot, so I'm not an expert in this, so I don't want to comment on things that I don't know. But you're absolutely right. A lot of this, if we get to the um, sort of another level of deeper researcher, then we can then we can then we can know more. I did know. Study a little bit about the meditation and mind wandering and how that affects our brain. So indeed, some of the research have done that they actually scan the brain to see the difference between when you do meditation versus you're not doing that, and uh, the folks that practicing meditation, their brain is actually somewhat different than we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, there's a question about whether there's a talk for teenagers, right? So I actually don't have one specifically for teenagers.
There's a
Um,
one question is how do we help a teenager boy who doesn't like social to be happier? Can you answer this question?
oh, yeah, I am not very sure. You can practice other areas. Uh, Kind of each of us have things. We went through our phases, different phases of our life, and we also have introverts versus extrovert. So I won't really feel the base case is probably you leave it be for the time being. Um, yeah, and I feel as much as I like the social connection, I also remember when I was a teenager, I was also not very much like socializing, but I am not necessarily unhappy. I think I'm a lot of time I'm perfectly fine with being left alone. And this actually changes obviously after I go to college and being an adult. So I don't want to replace our today's talk with the actual sort of childhood teenager psychology. Sort of there are separate sort of topics, separate books about this, um, and we just have to be careful on this. So I'm yeah, again, sorry, I'm not an expert in here.
Um,
Oh,
see.
there's a question about what makes you decide to do such a presentation. Help us. Does it make you happier? Absolutely, it does make me happier. Thank you very much. And I actually, I showed my own scorecard. Right, my whatever the kindness block is actually not as good. So after today's talk, I probably can move the kindness block to the left a little bit. Say,
Especially
okay,
one day you did a lot. That's a part of the happiness score. So you get higher happiness score if you do good things in one day, right?
yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. So yeah. So I think I can be happy. How do we get a copy of slide? Oh, so Yan's, thank you, Yan. You send a copy of the slide to everybody. It's great. A happy day for me to learn something now, contributing happiness, uh, helping somebody make another people happy. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's one thing that we can take out from here is to say, helping other people make us happier, right? So this is awesome because we do something, we kind of spread out our happiness.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah. How do people personality impact happiness? Such as my spouse usually is ashamed when I talk to stranger or make effort for social contact.
Mm.
Uh, okay, when she talk to strangers. I assume it's she, right? Talk to strangers. Yeah, it's okay. You know, the key point is making social connections, right? So connections that have many different facets. You know, we talk to our parents, our children, our spouse, our close friends, and then also close friends. As you can see, right, the researcher has shown everybody has the problem of talking to strangers, right? So even the most outgoing, sort of extrovert also have problem talking to strangers. So this is very, very unusual, very, very usual. There's nothing, there's nothing to be, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, yeah, we just, we obviously should talk to, our closer family members more often and establish that connection. That's just good. What is your current job? How curious are you getting into the research of happiness? Yeah, my current job is software, I'm in the part of software engineering. I did not actually research happiness. I just, this is a class I took and I volunteer at my workplace to help out my coworkers. Because of that, they forced me to do some research on these topics. So I have my daytime job and I'm just kind of a curious person. So I look at the research quite a few different topics. Okay.
Confidence is related to happiness. So how is being happy different from being confident?
That's a really, really good question.
Being confident is much more like being successful, right?
Yeah, that's true. Being confident, and I think not confident person or shy person can be happy. It's yeah, confidence in a sense is related to personality. In another sense, it related to success.
Mhm.
Um, it's yeah, yeah. So let me put it this way, right? If a confident person that's selfish, doesn't demonstrate a lot of kindness versus another person not very confident, but that person is making a lot of social connections nonetheless and
Yeah,
demonstrating kindness, helping other people. I think in that case, the less confident people may be a little bit happier than the confident
yeah,
people.
yeah. That's
Okay,
good.
yeah. This is great material, very helpful. Do you think we have one more session in Chinese too?
Mhm.
Okay. uh, any volunteers to have this talk in Chinese?
I can help. We
Okay.
can have another one in Chinese.
Yeah, okay, so we need to translate it into Chinese and do that. Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you. So just to get a pet teenage loves that will help with responsibility, happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Happiness, right?
That's very, very true. Yeah. Start early. Yeah, love it. This is a great idea. I never had pet, so I always want a pet.
You should. It can make you happier for sure.
Okay. How does social cultural background impact happiness?
Oh
Okay, so
shoot.
this is a good question. I think the social cultural background does impact happiness. Okay, this talk is essentially collected, designed for Western sort of United States, European kind of a tradition. Uh, I really haven't given too much thought about the Eastern culture and how that affect the happiness. I was My guess is something is universal. Some of the things are very universal, and yet others may be different. This is great question. I don't have a good answer. Eastern culture may be doing better with in terms of less mind wandering. I'm just thinking out aloud. Yeah, but perhaps uh uh yeah, that's the only thing I can think about. Are you happy? I'm very happy now. um i'm I'm unhappy, somewhat unhappy in the morning because the the bird that I have, they left. So that was, yeah, so that's the answer. Do you need to focus on improving do we need to improve our self-worth to improve our happiness? Are there any ways to improve our self-worth? Oh my God, this is a very deep question.
Yeah,
I think there's probably I think May, this is an excellent question.
yeah,
Um, in a way, frankly, my talk today is still kind of at the surface level. I suspect there's a very deep connection between self-worth to
self-happiness.
improvement our happiness. I strongly believe that's the case, because if we have our self-worth, then everything we may be doing better in everything that else we do. In a way, that's the fuel of everything, right? We exercise, we want to sleep well, we want to improve, we want to make social connection, all these. If we don't have self-worth, I don't think we can accomplish any of this.
Yeah, self-worth is
Um,
also some way related being confident, right? Improve.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, is there any ways to improve our self-worth? Oh my God, this is again a very deep question. Self-worth, we are we are created by God. Okay, we are in this world for a reason. Okay, we have, like I mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, we have unalienable rights to our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Okay, so the self-worth is God's given. There's nothing need to be done for any self-worth. You are here, you are here. That's enough. Okay, so yeah, so I actually don't know how to answer that question.
Just
Um,
try to be happy and be confident, maybe.
yeah, yeah, you are here in this world for a reason. That's it. And then each of us are unique. How to stay happy when you're with someone who is narrow-minded, extreme? Oh my God.
Oh,
Um,
that's tricky.
well, make sure they are really narrow-minded and extreme. Then in that case, you can ask them to improve. And if they can't, you spend more time with somebody who are not narrow-minded or not extreme, right? So you have the freedom. You can spend more time with people who are happy. Peter, that's a good question. I'm happier after your seminar. That's awesome. Thank you. uh, okay, Eastern culture put children do well on top of their happiness. Yeah, which is true. Yeah. So it's also a animal nature and human nature as well, right? You know, I was observing two birds in their parents, how they nurture their bird, and they wanted their bird to do well. So in a way, it's um, it's kind of animal instincts as well. So you know, Western culture may have a little bit different on how to make their children do well. Um, so I guess yeah. So I guess it's kind of it's just different. How did you learn to such good English speaker? Yeah, we practice. So Joe, you can do that same thing too. You can practice, keep on practicing. You will be awesome. Okay, how can we stay happy if the society has such huge change? How to face insecure? Oh, okay, in a positive way. So, Angelina, absolutely, you can stay happy if the society have such huge change. Frankly speaking, we 20th and 21st century has the in human history. Look at the war. If you look at the distraction, if you look at the disease, if you look at the lack of medicine, um, we are in the best period. We're so lucky. We live in the best part of the human history. So change is constant, and we can hopefully we can do it in a peaceful way. Um, we can be happy. You should be able to practice. Hopefully, you learn on the stuff that you learned today. How to face insecure political environment. Um, um, well, we will face it. So, but seriously, I do want to talk about, we have a lot of role models. Okay. Some of the role models, they are facing really, really tough situation. Some of them are prison, right? And unjustly so. But they remain a positive, sort of uh, positive role model. And then, you can go as old as reading the Bible to, for these type of stories, right? And then as more recent as, Nelson Mandela, right? And he is so happy, even though he was life in prison. So it's nothing, okay? So Angelina, it's nothing that what we have so far. So we should be function, and then we should make a positive change in the world. Um, and yeah, help your, but we should start with ourselves, and then we should start with our loved ones. Treat our loved one kindly, and treat our friends kindly, and then we can also treat strangers kindly. Then we'll do better. Okay, great. I think that's pretty
Okay,
much it,
thank you
right?
so much. So thank you everyone for coming. Um, I don't know when is the next talk, but if there is any, so I will inform you guys. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Zhang.
Bye.